11 o'clock Wednesday morning. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Ed, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you. You might stay up for that very long baseball game last night. I think they just scored another run, by the way.
Both teams did.
Both teams did. I thought we were going to get a run rule, and then they scored like 5 runs in the top of the 7th, and that kind of went out the window.
That was an old school, kind of 20 years ago, midweeker. I feel like when they had the big bats, and I do think there's a trend in college baseball right now. Stuart Lake was talking about this. They are so reliant on, I believe Pitch Track is the brand. There's several that kind of do this type of thing, but the umpires now, it's kind of like Major League Baseball. They go back and they can see within centimeters whether it was a ball or a strike. And a ball or a strike used to be somewhat based on, you had this general box, but depending on game flow, the pitcher, the hitter,
umpire.
Yeah, whether, the umpire's using all those things is what I'm trying to say to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's time to speed the game up.
Sure.
Sometimes you're in a game where you're talking about 2 very high-level teams in a regional, and, maybe you be a little bit more specific on what you call a ball or strike. But because they are, I believe, now being graded based on pitch track, at least at some levels, the strike zone has continued to shrink. And so that leads to lots of walks. That leads to lots of base runners. That leads to lots of pitching changes. That leads to long games. And when you have some weather mixed in as well, and you have rain delay, you're playing in the rain, so the ball's slippery, you get what you had last night. And, South Carolina had, I think, 9 pitchers that hit the mound. You never want 9 guys in a 9-inning affair to stand on the pitcher's mound. So you got the win, and I'm not knocking that at all. That you really don't care how it looks to a certain extent on midweeks. You just want to go win, and this offense has found itself in the last couple weeks, which is what you really wanted to see. This lineup's gotten deeper, it's longer, but certainly, and Carolina has pitched very well this year. Like they come into that game, I think, 3rd in the country in ERA. So not knocking the pitching, but just in general, the game last night was kind of a representation of maybe that little bit of a trend.
So you're telling me that the umpire couldn't do what the one in high school did to me and my team and just say everything that comes across the plate is going to be a strike whether you swing at it or not. We need to speed this thing along.
Oh. You still seem a little salty about that,
Well,
Tyler.
I'm not salty about it. We were actually winning the game. We won the game 26-2, but he just wanted to get the game over with. So he's like, for one, you're going to bat in your opposite hand. So if you're a right-handed batter, you got to go on the left-hand side of the box. I'd never batted left-handed in my life. And he said, everything that comes across the plate is a strike, so you better swing. We still won. So that's all that matters at the end of the day. But I guess you can't do that in college.
See, I would say that's pretty good umpiring on saying everything's going to be a strike, honestly. That's knowing the situation. Now, making you bat lefty, it's maybe a bridge too far, but
there was the ump last year that got mad at the player for questioning his strike zone, and then he rung him up on a ball that was 8 feet off the plate to end the game.
I think he got suspended after that, right? Was that
I hope so.
Was that SoCon?
Yeah, it was a smaller school game. But to go back to the game, I mean, the pitching there, Eddie Copper's been really good at. Remember we talked about this early in the season, like his first start, kind of rough, then rebounded, has been really, really good at times this year. He had, I think the thing that stands out there is you had some walks last night,
Well, he walked 2 guys right off the bat to start the game.
Right off the bat. And so you had a total of 8, 9, you had like 13 walks in the game. And I think that's the thing that they've typically avoided this year, and we've all heard, Stuart Lake's talked about that a ton. Matt Williams, Gamecock's pitching coach, he wants the ball in the strike zone, challenge the hitters, and they've done a pretty good job of that. Now, and we saw some of the faces that have been important. We even saw Veach, last night briefly. We saw Ty Good. We saw Roman Kimball, who played a starting role at points this year. But, it's not like we saw their SEC aces, like your typical starter plus bullpen. You know, it was a midweeker, so it's a little bit different. But the thing that this team has to get to in order to find the type of success they want to, ultimately, which is, hey, make it back to Omaha at some point. They've shown the capability to do that. We all wondered coming into the season, what is the ceiling, what is the upside of this team? And they showed that if they play like they did against Vanderbilt, sweeping a top 5 team, Vanderbilt's still a top 10 team according to all the polls I've seen, even after getting swept in Columbia. When they can put the pitching plus the hitting together, that's the type of team they can be. They've had kind of one or the other at times this year. The offense, no doubt, has started to hit its stride.
Yeah, I think, like you said, man, yesterday we were seeing some of the main guys, but for the most part, you're still trying to kind of build out the depth within this pitching staff. And I think when you get into the midweek, there are guys that are going to take on bigger roles. Like you may still see a couple of your main guys at the end. They put in Veach for 1 out just because they were like, we got to end this now. Like it's time to go home. It's time to end this. And would you have liked to have had to go to him again? No, of course not. But that was the case that they did, and he threw 1 pitch, so he'll be fine. That's just the same as throwing a bullpen, basically, I think, for him. But, you look at some of the guys, they've kind of tried to use the midweeks to simultaneously, when they need to get guys in there, they will in terms of going to their main guys while also trying to give guys opportunities. You always, I know every coach, you're going to attack every game the same way, but that's really not true in reality because you have to have guys who can eat up those innings. And, we saw Michael Polk, who comes in from Georgia, transfer guy. He's coming off of Tommy John from last year, missed all of last season. That's a guy that, you're going to want to see go out there and ultimately kind of build back up. This was an opportunity for him to go out there, throw about 14 pitches, and have a chance to, as the season goes along, maybe play a bigger role on this team. Jake McCoy, he got in there as a freshman and gave up some, put some guys on, gave up some runs, but a lot of the midweek is about opportunities. And Mark Kingston talked about this. When you have a game like this, every game kind of finds a flow, and sometimes that's low scoring, sometimes it's like it was last night, and it's incredibly high scoring. And when that happens, it does kind of it snowballs. I think it can be contagious, and you just have to hope your bats can pick up any slack that comes up, and South Carolina's bats certainly did that last night, as they really have for the last couple of weeks now.
I think we need to tip our cap to the Blue Hose for putting in a valiant effort. Perhaps they were trying to avenge the loss the women's basketball team had on Friday, as they nearly scored as many runs as the women's team did points the other day.
Oh, wow. Burn. I thought you were going to say shout out to the Blue Hose for providing South Carolina with Dalton Reeves and
that
Chris
also
Veach.
helps too.
Also, yes.
When you're essential, I mean, he batted one time against Miami of Ohio, but your true, I guess, debut results in 2 3-run homers. Pretty good way to start out a career at South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm sure that was special for him. It's the portal is weird, man, because the portal, in some ways, you say, man, especially in football, we talk about it's very hard to build depth because of the portal, because you're losing guys. South Carolina and this roster, they've actually done a really good job of using the portal to turn around and build depth. And sometimes you can go get guys who, you look at Reeves, who was at PC, obviously in the Palmetto State, and you can go, man, well, hey, we're South Carolina. Like, we're not promising you a starting spot. Cole Messina is here. Cole Messina is an All-American. But for some of these guys, it's about having an opportunity to compete at the SEC level. And for South Carolina, that means that, you can kind of pull that SEC card and we're the premier baseball program and all that, and you can build out your depth by going out and getting guys in the transfer portal. And this roster, it feels like that's what South Carolina has done.
Yeah, you even look at, like, Kennedy Jones, right? He was one of the guys that we identified in the season. All right, maybe he's not that guy right at the beginning of the year, but you know what he's done at his previous stop. You know the talent that he had, and look at him now, how he's come along. Last night, he had but what was he, 3 for 3 with a home run? I mean, he's been really, really good as of late.
Pegged in the head late in the game.
Yeah, and to your point, Wes, about the depth, I mean, you look like Austin Brindling, He was a big-time guy at his previous stop, smaller program, right? But he at North Florida, he was a first-team all-conference guy. He started every single game they played. He hit 386, and when he came in, that was the guy you're going, all right, at the minimum, he's going to be a depth guy. Best case scenario, he steps in and takes somebody's job. And if he does that here at South Carolina, that's fine. But they've got plenty of guys. They do have that depth. You got your established guys coming back. You had some position battles. And I think you've had some shifts even in the midst of the season where some guys like a Kennedy Jones, they've emerged. If they haven't emerged yet, then they're still there, potentially waiting a turn.
Well, regardless, the wins last night, 6 in a row now for South Carolina as they head into a short week taking on Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. That game coming up, first game coming up tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, 7:45. Your pregame as things get moved up a little bit with Easter weekend, being on Sunday. Now, Coach Kingston did not officially announce who the starting rotation was going to be for the weekend. It's going to be some combination of what we've seen with obviously Jones and SQ. Whether you start Jones a day early, keep him on Friday, maybe move somebody else in that Friday or in the Thursday role.
2 days early.
Or 2 days early, I guess, given that he pitched on Saturday. So you got a couple options, but again, they've got an embarrassment of riches at pitcher so far this season, though you did use the 9 last night. And we may have to find out right before game time what they decide to do with that.
Yeah, I do. I get that Thursday, Friday, Saturday series are a TV thing. It does, in my opinion, it's not ideal for your pitching staff. And I really don't like, as prevalent as arm injuries are to pitchers right now in today's baseball world, not just college baseball world, I kind of hate having to move the guys around like that. And it's a reality of the game right now. I get it. You want the exposure for the game of baseball. And so it's part of it. But I don't like that you have to move. Normally this would be moving him up one day, but because of the doubleheader last Saturday, you're moving him up 2 days. And so for South Carolina and for these pitchers, you do have to adjust. Now, the good thing is neither one of those guys, SQ, he went on Saturday, obviously. Eli Jones on Saturday, too. Neither one of those guys threw a ton of pitches on Saturday. So that does help a little bit with the bounce back for these kids' arms.
So, again, they'll be on the road this weekend taking on Alabama. They'll return to Founders Park next Wednesday for a midweek matchup with Georgia Southern. And our guy Josh has informed us we have a couple of pairs of tickets to give away for that. Callers number 4 and 5 right now, 803-404-6100 to win yourself a pair of tickets. See the Gamecocks take on Georgia Southern coming up next Wednesday out at Founders Park. We'll dive into what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday in his weekly presser as spring practice rolls along. Start off talking a little bit about this quarterback competition and the veterans entering the room this spring. That's next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
If you want to bring your home or even your business into the modern age, check out our friends over at Integrated Media. IntegratedMediaInc.com or 803-948-8327 is how you can reach Michael, Nathan, and their team there. You don't have to go to the big box stores to solve any of your audio-visual issues that you may be having. You can contact a local Columbia right here in the Midlands. Michael and Nathan have been to my home. They've been to Wes's home. They come out and make sure everything is running exactly as it should with the project, and they can do a variety of audiovisual services for you, whether it's tricking out that man cave, mounting a TV in your living room, on your patio, in that outdoor space. They can do that, but they can also do a complete smart home system for you where you can control your lighting, your thermostat, sound systems, TVs, and everything from the touch of a button on your smartphone. Again, you can get into contact with them at integratedmediainc.com or 803-948-8327.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Todd Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on this Wednesday. Yesterday afternoon, Coach Beamer did speak to the media, as he will do each and every Tuesday throughout spring practice. I told the story earlier. He actually caught Terry and I off guard during this or at the end of this, because typically Beamer's pretty consistent about going 30 minutes. And he capped it like right at 20 minutes yesterday, to where like we still had like 5 minutes of our segment left to fill that we were just expecting him to continue to talk through. But he only ended up answering about 7 or 8 questions yesterday.
Well, nobody else raised their hand, so
I guess not. So that's
it's on Dave and those guys.
Well, shout out intern Joe.
The intern Joe did ask a
continuing to
question.
bring some questions.
Yeah,
Intern Joe has had some A-plus questions lately,
has.
I will say.
Done a great job.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
I wonder if Beamer's going to start. You know how Beamer will mix in the first name during the answer? Has Joe gotten that treatment yet? Has he been upgraded?
I don't think
can't-
so, but it'd be cool if he mixed in just intern.
I know, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's his brand. Why not?
Well, we
Yeah.
practiced today,
like,
intern Joe.
That guy's
and,
been an intern for 12 years. What's going on there?
Officially, that title was dropped, but we're going to keep it.
Well, it's a brand at this point.
Yeah, he's still intern. It's like when you get an email and it's got the little thing in there where it just grabs your whatever the first name is.
Yeah.
So
dynamic
Beamer just automatically goes, yeah, you know what, intern? I think that the freshmen have all caught my attention.
That's
So I know we didn't plan on it, but should we just go ahead and do intern Joe's question here? It's number 7 on the list.
I was gonna say we can throw a loop into it a little bit here. Let's go into that question exactly. Cut number 7 here. Ed.
Yeah. It's hard not to notice those guys all across the board when you talk about the 3 freshmen on the offensive line, Josiah, Cam, and Blake. They're going to be really good players. When you look at those receivers, Mazeo Bennett and DeBron Gatlin, really excited about some of the things that they continue to do. Obviously, Dylan Stewart is as advertised and has really been impressive in 4 days as well. Fred and Wendell really excited about, so all of them, can I say that, and take the easy way out? But no, I think with all these guys, I mean, we're trying to, there's no one, I'll say this, through 4 practices where we've said, okay, man, he's probably a year away. Not really going to be able to count on him. In our minds, we got a long way till we play, but let's try and get them all ready to play. And none of them have given us any reason to think that they can't either. It's a good group, and whether it be special teams, whether it be offense, whether it be defense, let's find a role for them and get them out there and get them going. But we're definitely, it's a athletic group. We are absolutely, you mentioned Fred and Wendell specifically, we are absolutely more athletic at linebacker. And that's not a knock on anybody that's not here, the 2 guys that left. But these guys, when you talk about the 2 true freshmen and you talk about Bengali Kamara and Demetrius Knight, those are 2 really good players that were very productive at their previous schools, and 2 really talented freshmen that are long and athletic and what you want from a size standpoint.
So the question that intern Joe posed was, what freshmen have stood out to you so far the first couple of days of practice? And Coach Beamer, giving a coach speaky type of answer, basically saying that everybody looked good and there was nobody that they were overly concerned about. But a lot of names that he threw out there. I mean, start off with Dylan Stewart, who obviously is going to garner a lot of attention, being the 5-star guy coming in, especially at a spot like edge that needs some help coming away from last season. And from all indications from what he said and what you guys were able to see out of him, he certainly looks the part so far.
Yeah, Dylan Stewart, Josiah Thompson, both as advertised as 5-star guys so far, based on all indications. You're talking about 4 practices, so you got to put it in perspective a little bit. But for those 5-star guys, man, we talked about this before. The talent, the athleticism, it's going to be there. Like, this is not the recruiting industry 20 years ago where it's a very just kind of small group of people that are covering this thing. It's kind of mainstream. You got so many sites out there, and obviously they all sort of flow into, at least you're looking at On3 and the On3 industry ranking, you're looking at 24/7 composite. You got 4 different websites, 4 different groups of people whose rankings are going into that. So if a guy is a 5-star at this point, and Dylan is, I believe he was a 5-star plus, which means 5-star on all of them. Josiah was a 5-star on On3. I think he actually in the final ones narrowly missed 5-star status in the On3 industry ranking, which averages everything out, but still very high 4-star. So the point I'm getting at is, for most of those guys, quarterback can be a little bit different scenario, but in my opinion, almost all those guys, once they get to college, whether they're a boom or bust, it comes down to, are they willing to work? Are they willing to put in the effort? Are they able to pick things up quickly? Are they able to stay healthy? All those things. The actual baseline talent at this point in today's recruiting industry, it's almost always there for a 5-star guy. And so far, these 2, that part has been confirmed. And I think you listen to what Clayton White said last week. You listen to some of the things we heard from Beamer, and then what we've heard behind the scenes as well, it appears that, the mindset, the work ethic, the kind of the weight room, kind of the off the field stuff, it appears that element is there for both these guys as well. Then the question just becomes, all right, how good can they be? Like, we know there's a big upside here, but we know they're going to contribute, it seems like, at this point. But how far can that go?
Yeah, and they're already showing some, I want to say signs of, like, some positive signs on that front. It's not easy, but it's easier for an edge rusher to make a more significant impact in year one than an offensive tackle in Josiah Thompson. Now, we saw last year more than one South Carolina offensive lineman played a role in a big role, but that was a little bit more out of necessity. You would like to have, if Josiah Thompson plays, your ideal scenario is he's just better than everybody, right? Or he's good enough to play some type of role. The thing you look at with him is, and we knew this coming out of high school, just got to continue to get stronger, continue to get bigger. He has put on some more weight. I think he's listed at 300 pounds even on the roster. Maybe a little fudge there. I think he's probably not quite that, but he has put on a lot of muscle even in the short time since his days at Dillon were finished. Significant upside there for the future. And same thing with Stewart. I think if I'm kind of projecting it, Stewart probably has a chance to make a bigger impact more quickly, right? Because that is such a big need as an edge rusher, and I think that skill set and what you're being asked to do is a little bit more conducive to, hey, come in and pass rush on third down sometimes.
And two guys that you mentioned there, and again, we don't know exactly how it's going to shake out because you did bring in a lot of guys from the transfer portal as well, but Wendell Gregory and it's J.R. Johnson now? Is that what we're referring to him as instead of Fred?
It's now JR. Don't call him Fred Johnson.
Okay, all right. Now that'll be on the next pop quiz for you guys later on this week. But he talked about those guys being more of that athletic type of linebacker, the sideline to sideline type of guy that you look for, especially in the SEC. And maybe he was not trying to take a shot at the likes of guys that have left here recently, but it sounds like he kind of was. Those guys kind of being more in line with what you feel like you need to have to be successful going forward. In the middle of your defense.
Yeah. By the way, we are 100% on our pop quiz so far. Just
yes, you are. You're doing
throw that part out there, but. I think, and it doesn't have to be a shot, but it can just be an acknowledgement of, hey, there were some things that maybe you wanted to see better out of those two guys. And I think, not to make it about them, because I don't think Beamer wanted to make it about the past guys either, but I think just from a pure athleticism standpoint, ability to move, and you can play linebacker at a high level if you're a guy who just can maybe cover up a few deficiencies, whether it's speed or ability to kind of turn your hips, ability to run by being in the right place at all times and kind of being able to diagnose and process faster than other guys. But still, at the end of the day, you'd rather have that baseline talent, that athleticism. You got to know where you're going. Now, I know Ellis Johnson used to say, I think it was something to the tune of a fast guy who doesn't know what to do is just getting even further out of where he's supposed to be on the field, basically, even further out of the play. So you gotta come along. You gotta know where you're supposed to be. You gotta know where your gaps are, especially in run defense and stuff like that. But for these guys, and I think J.R. Johnson, you're already seeing those early signs. Obviously, both these guys, there's some excitement about them. Wendell was the more widely known, more highly recruited guy out of high school. J.R. Johnson you saw his ranking continue to move up as the process went along. But there are some signs this guy's going to help this team very, very early. I think they both will. Obviously, the transfers are right there in the mix. And we've talked about this for a few weeks now. South Carolina feels very good internally about where this linebacker group is at this point, but a big part of it is those two freshmen.
Speaking of defense, Coach Beamer also dove into the cornerback competition, so the guys are going to be making up the back end of the defense. We'll hear from him and what he had to say about that coming up. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on a Wednesday here on The Game.
All right, guys, continue to tell you about our friends at Classic Roofing right here in Columbia, South Carolina. Phone number 803-590-7870. ClassicRoofingSC.com is the website. And if you're more of an email person, you can also email them information@classicroofingsc.com. I'm going to encourage you, if you think there might be an issue with your roof or you just want that peace of mind about your roof and you kind of want to know, that do I have 10 years left on this thing? Do I have 1 year left? Is it somewhere in between? Are there some small things that need to be fixed that can maybe help you extend the life of that roof, I should say? Head on over to ClassicRoofingSC.com. You're already going to see some examples of some work that they've done. You'll even see the top of my house on there because they were out at our house. They took great care of us. They brought out the drone. They showed us exactly what they were going to do, and then they took care of it on a very quick matter. 803-590-7870. Call them today.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you. Reminder, coming up next Friday is the 107.5 Game Spring Golf Tournament out at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. If you want to take part, it's $400 for a foursome, $200 for a pair. 10 a.m. shotgun start. Going to have baseball tickets, Carolyn tickets, concert tickets, and crap your cards, all to give away out there. Give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. Register again, Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia at 803-755-2000. Diving back into the Beaver conversation, something that we haven't talked about nearly as much this offseason so far because there are so many other areas of concern is what's going on at cornerback for South Carolina. And Coach Beamer talked for a couple minutes about the competition going on in the secondary for this team yesterday.
Yeah, another one where it's neat watching that that battle in there. Obviously, you got guys like Judge Collier, who started a couple games for us last year. He is long and athletic and has worked to get stronger as well. So he's someone that started a couple games last season and has some experience. David Spalding's working quite a bit out there right now. David's kind of does everything, safety, nickel, corner, but he's been out there. You talk about Vakari Swain, who's out there as well. Jalewis Solomon comes in this summer. We'll throw him into the mix out there as well. And then, O'Donnell's kind of on that other side right now, and he's competing with all of them, but all those guys are battling out to figure out who's on the other side. But they're all mixing it in there. I know you guys think I'm full of it when I say there's no real depth chart. Now we have, you're the first group today, but it might be whenever the next media availability is, you'll be out there and see, here's the starting 11 on offense and defense. Well, it is for that period. And then maybe the next time we do a team period, it's a different corner out there getting work with the ones. And then the thing that's helping us too right now, Jordan, is just the fact that because we have pretty much our entire team here right now, except for 3 scholarship freshmen and some walk-ons that we'll get here in the summertime, we're able to set up these practices just like we do in August, meaning that everyone's getting reps. When we're doing a team period, most of the time we have an 11-on-11 group going on one field, and then we have 11-on-11 going on a separate field. So everybody is getting reps. So because of that, it might be, Vakari, you're on this field today, this period, next period you're over here on the other field. Emory, you're over here this period, next period you're over there. And they're all getting a ton of work, and then we're able to get in there and evaluate the tape and go from there. So it's pleased with the progress. I've seen them make a lot of plays, and got to continue to and just show that consistency and details to do what we need them to do.
So obviously you have Marcellus Dial moving on to the NFL, O'Donnell Fortune, being on one side there, and then that other spot seemingly being wide open. And, we ran through the list of guys. They're all very talented, all guys that have been hyped up to certain degrees. But I kind of look at a guy, Vakari Swain, a guy that you guys have been very, very high on, maybe taking the opportunity to step up into that other cornerback role this season.
First of all, I'm absolutely appalled at this push from Shane Beamer to discredit the depth chart drill. This will not be taken lightly.
Absolutely.
That was a direct shot at you.
I know. The depth chart drill, it's a real thing, Coach. To his point, and he reminds us often, to his point, you can't take what you see in the depth chart drill, as we call it, and they don't call it, as gospel. Mm-hmm. But I still say the first guys that roll out there. Now, if you're two-spotting it, as Dal Loggins calls it, where you're running two entire teams at once, yes, it's going to be a little bit differently. It's going to look a little bit differently. But, I think certainly to get down into this position, we heard from Clayton White talking about it last week. And, he talked about kind of the 3 main guys at that time, Judge Collier, Emory Floyd, and then Vakari Swain. Well, Beamer additionally added in David Spalding, who, like he said, is working there and can work anywhere in the secondary, which I think gives you some great versatility and depth there. And then Jalewis Solomon, who we have mentioned here on the show several times as being an option there. I personally felt during the transfer portal window that it needed to be a priority to go get another cornerback. We saw South Carolina. At one point, it looked like it was maybe going to be a priority, especially when there were rumors about O'Donnell Fortune possibly leaving. Well, once he stuck around, then I think South Carolina said, look, we feel good about our guys who are going to compete at that spot. Now, we may not know which particular kid is going to be the one that goes out and outperforms their teammates and wins the job, but we feel good about one of these guys doing it, and then the rest of the guys kind of filling in after that. And I've noticed the trend there, Chris. I think Torian Gray very much prefers to be able to go out, get his guys as high school players, and then develop them. That's one of the positions on this team. And to his credit, he for the most part has been able to keep those guys on campus. And they added Gerald Kilgore, which obviously there's a little different situation because you're about the brother of somebody who's already on your team too. So there's a connection there. But for the most part, in the secondary, they've been able to go out, land high school guys or a JUCO guy and Marcellus Dial, keep them on campus, and try to develop them from there.
Yeah, it seems like their thought process was, hey, if you let's say you do lose OD at that, because it was a question, right? There was a legitimate question at one point. Well, then you're going from, remember how Clayton White, the defensive coordinator for South Carolina, talked about, he's mentioned this more than once, like the plug-and-play aspect, right? At DB, they've had that really every year to an extent. Like, some guys that are coming back that are at least somewhat established, if not firmly established. And so this offseason, you were looking at the prospect of not only losing, Marcellus Dial, but Marcellus Dial and OD Fortune. And then you're going from being very used to plug and play the past few seasons to, well, we don't really know who even one of them is going to be. That's a pretty steep drop off. And so it made sense when you thought that you might lose both guys, one to the NFL, maybe one to the portal potentially, to go find one. But when OD came back, as you said, Wes, not to just completely restate it, you felt better about, okay, we can find out of all the guys that we have on the roster, we have somebody in OD that's established, that's kind of taking incremental jumps every year. We think he'll take another jump. And then out of these other, 3 to 4 guys, we'll find one, whether it's a Spalding, who it looks like they've moved him over there at least part-time, Solomon, who's very talented coming in, Vakari Swain, Emory Floyd, Judge Collier, who's the most experienced of that bunch now at the corner position. Now you've got some options, and you feel like, something that Torian Gray's done is he has developed guys well. You've seen guys take leaps from the beginning of their career since he's been here to end product. Now you feel like you've got an established guy and some others that you can roll in there, and you'll find one, at least, out of that bunch.
When you talk about that development through the spring, and again, as Beamer mentioned there, you're not able to, put everything into what you see from a specific drill or the depth chart drill. In this case, as far as development goes, how much can you learn from these guys at the cornerback spot over the course of the spring when you're trying to figure out who that second starter is going to be when the fall rolls around? Or is that something you kind of have to wait and see, especially when you take on an opponent like Old Dominion in game one, where you can realistically rotate a lot of those guys in?
Yeah, I think they'll obviously try to have they'll try to know going in, but then you're always gaining information, right? You're always gathering data. And so can that shift pretty quickly? Yes. And a lot of times it will kind of depend on, maybe how big that gap is in practice. So I think you'd probably give Judge Collier the edge right now because he had the edge last year. He was the third corner for the most part, played a pretty good bit for a freshman. I think it was about 180 snaps, if I remember right, according to PFF. So he played. He was the guy. I think you give him the leg up. But, I think you have some guys with a lot of upside behind him pushing. Emory Floyd, he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, but he's not running track anymore. And then, of course, Vakari Swain, I think, has the most upside of any of those guys. So, I think it'll be a continual process. I think OD's the guy on one side, obviously, and then those guys will keep battling. If they feel very strongly like somebody's just locked down the spot, you still have to go play well in the games. But, you could see a scenario, depending on how this offseason goes, where they say, look, guys, one of you is going out there first, but y'all are basically co-starters. Like, we're going to rotate you every other series and then go from there. Or it could be a little bit more like you've earned the first spot, and that guy's going to go in just a little bit less.
And we'll continue to learn as spring practice rolls along. Spring game a little under a month away on April the 20th. Wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, a former Gator with some parting shots at his former school. Talk about that next here on the game.
All right, I'll tell you about our presenting sponsor here on the game for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. You know who it is. Our friends at Firehouse Subs. Shout out to Larry Chandler, owner-operator of all 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. If you want to go order online, use the Rapid Rescue. Avoid the wait. Use the Rapid Rescue to go so your sub is waiting on you hot and ready as soon as you get to the store. Again, 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Go to firehousesubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app to get more information and to find your favorite Firehouse Subs. The guys, I'm going to say it again. I mean, if you go to firehousesubs.com, they got the information right there for the new limited time only offering. I'm still not going to talk about it. I'm still just going to tease it. You got to go to firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app to find out. FirehouseSubs.com, the Firehouse Subs app, easiest way to order. Earn yourself some rewards on future purchases for Firehouse Subs.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you for a few more minutes, wrapping up the Wednesday edition of the show. Reminder again, tomorrow night you do have baseball in action on the road, taking on Alabama out there in Tuscaloosa. Pregame coverage starting at 7:45. First pitch coming up at 8 o'clock. Women's team in action on Friday in their Sweet 16 matchup, taking on Indiana. That will be at 5 o'clock on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG, with pregame coverage starting at 4:30. I wanted to close out with this. I'm just going to call him Princely U because I'm probably going to screw up his last name, but we know him as the defender from Florida that came to Williams-Brice Stadium this past season with Florida, transferred to Ole Miss in the transfer portal back in the wintertime. Was speaking to the media yesterday and had some interesting comments that seemed to point to Florida and their inability to develop in his eyes. Let's go cut number 12 here, Ed.
My attacking the run game a little bit, but I feel like here I'm getting coached harder for things like that. You know, I feel like at Florida, like the way I was coached, it was kind of like it was almost as if like they was just telling me to go out there and use my talent, if that makes sense. But here, you know, Coach Lou and Coach Coach Lou and Coach Joyner, they really on me about the little things, you know, attacking the run. Coach Lou really goes through the progressions of the drops and the routes that are being run when I have to go into coverage. Like when I was at Florida, it was like they would just tell me, go drop to this area, and I would have to figure out everything else on my own. But here, you know, they go real into depth. I feel like I'm actually getting, you know, developed here.
Not the most ringy endorsement for the University of Florida, I'll say that much.
By the way, Chris is our resident enunciator. You got that one?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Please enlighten us.
Couldn't tell you. I would have to look it up online.
Chris practices these things in the mirror, but
Princely U works. We all know who we're talking
just
about.
Fine. Just Princely.
And where are y'all on this? Are you cool with the brutal honesty, or is it like, all right, man, that group did give you your start, like that was your school for a moment, and that you know, obviously they've had some coaching changes on the defensive side at Florida, and there's a reason for that. But still, I do kind of find it hard to believe that the Florida coaches were quite literally like, "Hey, man, you're good. Just go out there. We really don't have anything to add.
We got nothing for you." Yeah, I mean, and look, I don't ever like to be like the word police, and you should have not said it that way, but. I mean, I'm certain some, you know, NFL teams would not be super happy looking back on that, right? And this is a guy that has NFL potential, I think. He's a really, really good player. You know, a better version of that first of all, he loses a little credibility. He didn't know the current coach who's developing him so well. Forgot the name there.
He's only been on campus for a short time.
True.
Everybody's got name tags on.
I shouldn't be too hard on him either. But, I mean, accentuate what your current school was doing well, why you picked your current school, right? Won't throw your old school under the bus. You could say something like, hey, they're doing a really good job here of really developing us and putting us in great positions. You know, and you hear guys say this. Sometimes guys get into a more loose, quote-unquote, defensive system, and they say it in a positive way. Hey, they just let us go play ball.
Sure.
It's not too complicated. So, I mean, I get what he was saying. There probably was not as much ill intent as it came across, but not the best look.
I don't think that necessarily means that Florida's defensive staff, which they did make several moves this offseason in their defensive staff, but I don't think they're as careless as maybe that quote comes across as. I think he was just trying to imply that the development he's getting at Ole Miss so far feels better than what he was getting at Florida to this point.
You know, and sometimes, I mean, we're all guilty. Sometimes you say something out loud and you're just like, I mean, I shouldn't have said that. Or maybe you don't even completely agree with it. Maybe it's just kind of your thought in that moment. And other times you say it with your chest and you're like, yeah, I meant what I said. So I don't know which one of these things that was. I don't know if there's actually bad blood there, or, you know, I think it's only natural if you're at a new place. You are going to it's pretty easy to kind of hype up the place you're at now. Nobody's going to sit there and say, yeah, I was getting way better development at Florida. I just came here because of the big NIL bucks. So I don't think that's what you're going to hear.
What's the Michael Scott quote? Sometimes I start a sentence not knowing where it's going. I hope I find it along the way.
Yeah, I do that all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But, I mean, NIL, transfer portal world, guys.
Yeah. Good quotes. Good for conversation, at least. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Again, coming up next, the halftime show with myself and Terry Ford. We'll continue on the Beamer conversation, dive into baseball as well. Also get set for more March Madness as the Sweet 16 starts up tomorrow evening. This has been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. For Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark, I'm Tyler Head, here on The Game.
Before we get out of here, allow us to tell you about one more great sponsor. That's our friends at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia, 511 12th Street, West Columbia, South Carolina, where owner Kendall Walsh, manager Joni James, they're going to take great care of you and any and all of your custom framing needs. That could be diplomas, graduation, actually right around the corner. It'll be here before you know it. So if you want to get a great gift for a graduate in your life, why not get their diploma framed up with an awesome frame from Gold Line Framing? Also, they can really frame up anything you can think of that could be original artwork,